years have passed, but time can't diminish the heinous nature of the crime.
Oh my God.
Took her head right off.
And then they cut her right here.
A woman's decapitated and naked body found in a field along a bike path near 25th Avenue and Cactus in 1992. Police identified her as Angela Brosso. They found her body on November 9th, her 22nd birthday.
Do you believe this is the work of a serial killer?
Yes, I do.
Now retired homicide detective Russ Davis was the case agent in the Brosso murder.
The suspect evidently didn't have much respect for a human life.
The night before, Brosso had gone on an evening bike ride alone. Her purple Diamondback Topanga mountain bike was never found.
Took the bicycle with him and the body part with him.
11 days later, Brosso's head was found floating in a canal about 2 miles away. Because of the condition the head was in, police believe it may have been refrigerated before it was done. 10 months later, September 22nd, 1993, the body of 17-year-old Melanie Bernas was found floating in the canal at I-17 in Dunlap, very near where Brosso's head was found.
When we found Melanie, I immediately thought it was probably the same person.
She, too, took an evening bike ride along the canal the night she was murdered. Her green and blue bike was also missing.
We did all kinds of stakeouts and bike riding and put up metal signs with information on it.
Detective William Shira, an officer at the time, remembers patrolling the area on his bike.
I don't remember seeing a lot of people out and about on the bike trail.
Shira is now one of the Phoenix Police Department's cold case investigators re-examining the cases, and there are a lot of similarities.
They were stabbed multiple times, but there's one very distinctive stab wound.
In both cases, investigators believe the girls were killed between 7 and 9 p.m., murdered within yards of the bike paths. In the Brosso murder, apartments were within an earshot of the murder scene, and in the Bernas murder, hotels were nearby. But nobody ever reported seeing or hearing anything.
It seems pretty bold to me that it would be dusk, maybe night,
Right.
when this happened. And there's a chance that people could have heard, people could have been riding by.
It's very brazen, yeah.
The girls were on separate bike paths, but each within yards of tunnels like this when they were initially stabbed. So what roles do these tunnels play in the investigation? Detectives aren't sure if the killer used them for cover or for getaway.
Was there a ploy that made the girl stop to talk to this person? Or did he just knock them off the bikes? I mean, we'll never know that.
Police always believed the same person was responsible for both murders. Several years ago, DNA taken from both crime scenes was tested and sealed their theory.
Obviously, we know it's a match because the DNA sample is the same.
They matched each other.
While there are many similarities in the murders, there are also some differences that have detectives scratching their heads. While Brosso was found naked in a field, Bernas, whose body was found in a canal, was dressed in a swimsuit like this one that police reproduced. It was not hers. She did not leave her house wearing it.
My thought they were killed or she was killed and then redressed.
And only the first victim, Brosso, was decapitated.
Usually a serial killer, in my estimation, will graduate in his violence and stuff. This one here backed off.
Definitions differ on the number of victims it takes to qualify as a serial killer. Even now, police believe whoever killed Brosso and Bernas killed others. Detectives have searched national databases looking for similar crimes to no avail.
But that doesn't mean anything because at these two crime scenes, he changed.
Investigators are now re-examining the 800 tips that came in on the cases, still looking for leads.
We have a list of over 300 people that we've made based on tips that have come in that we would like to try and contact.
Using DNA testing, investigators have eliminated at least 30 potential suspects. Detectives have theories on why the killer hasn't been caught. They say he could either be dead, in a prison, a mental facility, or...
There's also the off chance that he stopped. Look at the BTK guy. He didn't kill for 25 years, and he was a normal person for that time frame.
20 years later, detectives are still hoping the Canal Killer is caught.
We got a lot more developed technology now, and there's a good chance that if the person's still alive, it could happen.
Our hope is with our whole squad looking at it that maybe somebody will pick up something that, that I don't see or, my boss doesn't see or somebody else.
There's certain cases that just kind of go with you. This is one of them. This is two of them.
Jill Monier, Fox 10 News.
We are learning much more about a convicted serial killer now on Arizona's death row.
Bryan Patrick Miller, sentenced to death for the brutal killings of 2 young women in the early 90s. And now we're getting a look at the evidence from items collected at the scenes 30 years ago to journals authored by Miller 40 years ago. And we also hear from those who knew Miller as a teen.
Fox 10's Nicole Garcia delves into the case of the Phoenix Canal Killer. But first, we need to warn you, some of the images you're about to see are disturbing and graphic.
I'm telling you is your DNA is linked to both these women who were killed.
Bryan Patrick Miller sat in silence after being accused of murder for the first time. He repeatedly denied the charges during his 2015 police interrogation.
How can you explain to me that your DNA is there?
I can't. I can't remember everything I did back then, but I know I didn't kill anyone.
But the evidence said otherwise. This was the scene in November 1992. Angela Brosso's decapitated and nude body was discovered by a passing bicyclist along the Arizona Canal. Her head was found 11 days later in the water. The postmortem report showed she'd been sexually assaulted. And this was the scene in September 1993. Melanie Bernas's body was found in the canal less than 2 miles away from where Angela was killed. Melanie's body was mutilated and carved. She was sexually assaulted as she was dying. DNA collected from both women linked them to the same killer. After more than 2 decades, police finally identified a match to their DNA evidence.
It's your time to tell me what happened.
I don't know what happened because I was.
You have to know what happened.
No.
Your semen is there. That's the only person that does know is you. Because that's the only way your semen could have been with these women.
When Miller finally faced a judge 7 years after his arrest, his defense was not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mr. Miller doesn't know what happened those 2 evenings in 1990. He suffers from complex dissociative disorders, and those are trauma-based disorders.
Miller suffered physical, emotional, and psychological abuse as a child. His mother, Ellen, was a detention officer with MCSO. His father died when he was very young. PTSD and sexual sadism are 2 disorders that Miller has been diagnosed with.
Bryan was like an unwanted guest in his own home. Ellen told me she was pissed off that her son lived and her husband died.
A psycho mother.
A young man that didn't have a chance to develop his social skills or any skills, basically.
As a teenager, Miller composed this, referred to as the plan. It details the gruesome actions he would eventually carry out as an adult, including kidnapping, stabbing, carving, and sexual acts.
There is no question that what the defendant did deserves the death penalty.
The judge sealing Miller's fate, sentencing him to the death penalty twice.
I'm Detective Shiver. How are you?
Nervous?
Do you want a water or soda or anything?
Water would be great.
Just regular water? You sure you don't want Coke?
No. Had way too much caffeine today, so.
Do you need the restroom or anything?
I do need a restroom, but I can.
Are you good right now? Do you want to go now?
I think I can hold off.
Okay, just let me know if you need to go.
I'm more concerned with what's going on.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't tell me anything in the car. They just asked about my vehicle and.
Well, anytime you're brought into a police station, your name came up in an investigation, so we have to bring you down and chat with you about it. But anytime we're brought in here, I got to do the old standard, read you your rights. It's just the land of the law. So, 1854. Says you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you. In a court of law, you have the right to the presence of an attorney to assist you prior to questioning and to be with you during questioning if you so desire. If you cannot afford an attorney, you have the right to have an attorney appointed to you prior to questioning. Do you understand these rights?
Yes.
Well, before we talk about a lot of stuff, what's your background? Where are you from?
I'm from, grew up in Hawaii.
Grew up in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Were you born in Hawaii?
Born in Michigan, but I was only there for maybe a week.
So you're not a Michigan Blue fan?
No. Not in the sports at all.
So you grew up in Hawaii after being born in Michigan?
Yeah.
How long did you live there?
About 10 years.
About 10 years?
Yeah.
So then you had been about 10, then where did you move?
Here to Phoenix. Came out for summer vacation. My grandmother lived out here at the time, and then my mom came out the following year.
Do you know what part of the town did your grandma live in?
She was North Phoenix. Then she moved to Washington State, and but it was 35th, right around 35th and Olive.
In Olive. So Dunlapish Olive. And so about 10 years old, you come out here, you're living with grandma originally?
Yeah.
And then mom came out?
Yeah.
Is there a reason you came out to live with grandma, or?
I never got a reason why. I think it was mostly financial.
What were your folks doing?
My mom was, at the time that I remember, she was security at a grocery store.
In Hawaii?
Yeah.
What island were you on?
Oahu.
Oahu. Do you guys live in the main, like Waikiki, or?
In Kaneohe.
I can't spell that.
Yeah. Kaneohe is the area where they filmed a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean.
So, 10 years old, you're, what, fourth grade-ish?
Just going in the fifth.
Yeah. Was your dad around?
No, he passed away in 1977.
Sorry to hear that.
He's the reason why we were in Hawaii, because he was Army.
What did he do in the Army?
Let's see, he started at Fort Knox, and then, I don't know a lot about my dad.
You don't know what he did?
I know he was Special Forces, but that's all I know.
So he passed away in 87, is that what you said?
77.
70.
Yeah.
So you were 5-ish?
Yeah.
You were born in 72, right?
Yes.
So, Mom, you guys stay there for at least a few years, 5 years. Mom sends you out here for a year, and then you live with Grandma. What was Grandma's name?
Leela James.
That was Grandpa around, or?
He passed away
before you came out here, or?
No, it was after 80s, late 80s, early 90s.
What was his name?
David James.
David James. So while you were out here with Grandma and Grandpa, did you get along with them very well, or?
I got along with him great.
What about Grandma?
For the most part, you know, she was probably at the time my best friend. Her and my aunt. See, when I moved there, it was my grandmother and my grandfather, even though they were divorced. He was in no shape to live on his own, so they had him still living under the same roof. And it was my aunt and her husband at the time. And my aunt's name was, at the time, Barb Hamill. It's now Barb James. And her husband was Gordon Hamill.
And how'd you get along with them?
Got along with them great. My uncle was really tough. I got picked on a lot, so he tried teaching me Tang Sudo. It's like martial arts, but
one of the many forms of jiu-jitsu,
yeah,
karate.
We did that for a little while, and then he just kind of dropped it.
Did you like it at all, or?
I mean, what kid doesn't like stuff like
you
that?
Remember any cool moves that you learned?
No.
No?
He was trying to teach me to defend myself, but it was like, I'd rather just walk away.
Now, what made the kids pick on you in school?
Well, in Hawaii, they picked on me because I was white.
Howley?
Yeah, Howley. And here, it was because that was different. I wasn't like the other kids because I raised in a different environment. I kept to myself. Didn't like sports. But
so what were you into as a smaller kid?
I liked bicycles for a while. Well, I still do. I collect them more than anything. But
what kind of bikes?
I used to have like old Schwinn's. I had the West Coast Chopper's bike for a while, and the Orange County Chopper, Huffy, or not Huffy, but Schwinn. Anything that's different stands out. I had the big balloon tire bike for a while. With
you thought it was like the quasi beach combers or something similar to that.
So it's just the ones that stand out.
What about the BMX stuff?
I had a BMX bike when I was a kid. That was my first bike.
So beachcombers and just chopper type bikes.
I do have a mountain bike that I use in the trails by my house every once in a while. But
what kind of mountain bike?
Mongoose.
Mongoose. So it like got the cool forks on it and stuff?
It's got suspension forks, it's got hydraulic disc brakes, but it's a basic.
21 speed or?
Yeah, something like that.
18, 21.
I haven't ridden it
in a while. How long did you have that bike?
I still have it.
No, I know, but you get it when you're a little bit older or as an adult?
I had it for 3 years.
3 years. So how long did you ride like the chopper type bikes?
Maybe a year. Because they're awkward.
To the beachcombers?
Yeah, I ended up selling them. This year I sold, well not this year, last year, I sold 2 of my cruisers. I had a 1903 Felt. It's kind of like an old Harley.
So what trails around your house were you riding?
Trail 100.
Okay, that's up to like North Mountain Park kind of?
Yeah. I take it from 7th Street. They've got the Visitor Center Park area right across from the point. And then I ride it over to where the Sunny Slope School and the police department is, and then ride back.
So do you ride frequently, or were you at the time, or?
I haven't ridden my bike since maybe 6 months ago.
Kind of goes in phases.
Yeah.
What about when you were younger? Is that how you got around? Or?
Yeah, that's how I got around until I got a car.
When did you get a car?
I had a roommate at the time. He would loan me his car for a while, and then I bought, after the church, knew someone that was selling a car, and I bought that.
What church?
Perry's Valley, Mennonite.
Mennonite? Yeah. Now, you still belong to that, or is that back then? Or?
My daughter goes to it. I don't go to it anymore because I work Sundays.
Now, were you raised as a Mennonite, or?
No. I started going there, like, early 90s.
To the Mennonite church?
Yeah.
What were you before that? Or
my mom...
were you raised in a certain religion?
I guess if I was raised in any religion, it was Mormon.
Mormon.
But my mom, that was her thing, and when I moved in with my grandmother, couldn't stop.
Right. So the grandma and grandpa weren't churchgoers?
No, they weren't. They were religious, but not church-going.
Just kind of their own beliefs are at the home?
Yeah. I did find out my grandmother, when she was a kid, had been with the Mennonite church for a while, but otherwise, family's been religious, but not, like regular churchgoers. Although my mom, before she passed away just a couple of years ago, cancer. She was going to like a non-denominational church with her husband.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, so when you were a kid, you're roughly 5th grade coming out to Phoenix. Where'd you go to school? Do you remember?
I don't remember the name of my elementary schools. There was one near where my grandmother lived.
It's okay,
Yeah,
I don't remember.
but then when me and my mom got our own place, it was about Union Hills and 35th.
Did you go to Park Meadows then, or?
Sunrise or Sunset or something like that. And then I went to Desert Sky Junior High and Berry Goldwater High School. Got my GED. First job was Burger King, then Smitty's, then St. Vincent de Paul. Got married, went to Washington State. Came back to Phoenix. Divorced. Went back to work for St. Vincent de Paul. And then now I work at Amazon. I have a daughter who's at home right now. I have her full custody.
Does she see mom at all, or?
Maybe like once or twice a year.
And something between those two, or just the divorce in general?
It was the divorce. I filed for divorce after my wife was cheating on me, and I requested joint custody, and well, my ex-wife kept having CPS called on her, and a few issues came up, and she was trying to get custody of my daughter so they could move, and the judge ruled that I got full custody.
So does your daughter get along with mom, or?
Yeah, it took her a while to get over the feelings, but the main pull for her to go there is she's got 3 half siblings, half brother, half sisters,
And where's her mom live? Roughly, I mean, in the valley somewhere.
Somewhere here in the valley.
So when your daughter goes out there, her mom
comes pick her up at the house.
So you try not to have much contact with.
Yeah, because of everything she put us through,
right.
It's the one person on the face of the earth I could probably honestly say I hate.
Well, and daughter's old enough to call her and say whatever, so you don't
when
know.
she gets bored, she texts her and it's like, all right, just don't tell me about it.
You don't have to chit-chat with her, because she's old enough to kind of communicate with her.
Yeah.
So when you lived here with grandma and then mom moved out here, you guys all lived at the house there for how long before you guys moved to Union Hills area?
We were probably in the house with my grandmother for maybe a year and a half.
And was your aunt and her husband, was everybody still in there at the time?
They were all together until shortly after I moved out, and then my aunt got a divorce. So then it was just my grandmother and my aunt. And then my aunt moved to Washington State, near Portland, Tillamook. And
Cheese place.
Yeah. And things didn't go well there, so she moved to Portland. And then she convinced my grandmother to move up there, so I helped my grandmother move up there. And then they convinced my mom to move up there, and then they convinced me to move up there. It's like, all right,
But that was later on?
Yeah.
But as a kid, you stayed out here with mom pretty much?
Yeah, I stayed out here with mom, and,
How was your childhood growing up with all that going on?
With me and my mom? Horrible.
What made it horrible?
Physical abuse.
When you say physical abuse, because that's kind of a vague term.
Being beaten. Didn't matter if I did something wrong or she did something and forgot she did it. I would get a beating for it if I showed up.
What kind of beating?
belt, but she used her security belt, so it was like a law enforcement belt. And usually I hit by the buckle.
So how long was that started when you were like 10 or 11-ish?
It started when I was 5,
right after Dad died?
Like the week after. And it went on for 10 years, and it stopped. One day she went to her room to get the belt, came out with it, and I was sitting in the hallway, and as soon as I saw her with the belt, I kicked my foot through the wall, and I said, "You're not hitting me anymore." And she turned around, put the belt away, and just left me alone.
You're about 15?
Yeah.
So you're about the same size or bigger than her by then?
No, I was probably a little taller, but I was scrawny.
And what did she have a security belt for?
Oh, she did security. She did shortly before she left Hawaii. She was training from Honolulu PD and didn't make the cut. When she came here, she did security work, bodyguard work, and then she worked for MTSO, detention officer. So she worked Durango and Madison Street.
Okay. So when she would beat you with that belt, and you said a lot of times the buckle would hit you, where was she striking you at?
Arms, legs, torso.
Did it leave welts or bruises? When you went to school, did anybody ever see it, or?
I would go to school, long sleeves, pants. Nurse would call me in one day, and she saw all the welts. They did nothing about it.
What school was that at?
And I was at the elementary, and
So did you harbor a resentment to your mom for all that, or?
I did for a good while. But obviously, I tried to make things
as best as you could.
Yeah. When they moved to Washington, we actually moved in with my mom, and for the most part, that worked out.
Well, you were a little bit older. How old were you then?
25.
So from after you were 15, and prior to that, did Mom have a boyfriend that stayed around the house at all, or?
No. She dated, but didn't live with anyone. She'd have roommates occasionally, but they were female roommates.
Now, was Grandma around at any of this time when you were getting the beatings, or did she already?
She knew all about it. She'd witnessed it before, and they always told me, called Child Protective Services and called the cops. And the problem is, back then, call the cops and they find out that the mom's sheriff's office, done deal.
I'm sorry to hear that. So during those time periods, did you ever have to go to counseling or anything like that? Did you ever lash out as you got older?
Yeah, I lashed out. I got in trouble.
What kind of things you get in trouble for?
Shoplifting, criminal damage. I did assault someone in my teen years, did juvie.
What happened there?
It was kind of blacked out and, hurt someone, and someone noticed later that the person looked a lot like my mom. And
when you say someone, is that like a counselor, or?
No, it was just a random person, and someone I'd never met before. And but
what happened in that assault, or how did it happen?
Something I really don't like thinking about, just because it's totally not me. hit him in the back. You know, but I'd really not like to talk any more about that. You know.
Okay, so was that? I think that was just from the times that your mom and grandma, you know, put you through all that torment that it just kind of led you to something like that?
My grandmother didn't really put me through torment, but my mom did, and
well, she let your mom do it.
Well,
she was aware of it.
Yeah, she did, but I never held any resentment for that. You know. I ended up forgiving my mom. I think maybe 10 years ago.
Get forgiven her for what? For doing the beatings?
Yeah.
And after that event, did you go to like kid jail or anything like that, or?
Yeah. You know, got detained for a little while. Was released while I was 17, and went to. They said, as long as you don't move back with your mom while you're juvenile, everything's fine. I went to a halfway house, and from there, they helped me, get my first job at Burger King, and then turned 18, needed a place to go, and that's when I called, people from the church they had met, and a place to stay.
So when you turned 18, what, you couldn't go back to mom's, or?
Didn't want to. I probably could have, but it's like I wanted good things, not something that's just, I didn't want to live in fear.
So when you were in the halfway house or detained, did you ever seek any counseling, or do you have any mental health people that you had to talk to?
While I was detained, they had me speak to counselors, and then, maybe for, I can't remember how many months, we would have counseling, and then we stopped, right before my release. And the only counseling I've had since then is I've had couples counseling.
Did they diagnose you with any, issues? Back then, you didn't have to take any medications or anything like that?
They tried putting me on, antidepressants for a while.
Was that while you were in the treatment home, or was that after?
Yeah. And it just had weird side effects, so we stopped. Right now I struggle with depression, but it goes, it's untreated. It's mostly, loneliness. Even though I live with my daughter, since being divorced and all that.
Do you and your daughter get along pretty well, or?
Yeah, we get along really well.
Have you a good relationship? Now, when you were in the halfway house, did, some psychologists or psychiatrists or counselors give you the ways to release your feelings? Did they have you write stuff down or anything like that?
Drawing, writing, I used to draw a lot. I don't write.
What kind of drawings were they?
I used to draw cartoons, just characters, nothing specific. It'd be dogs, silly dogs. Really liked cars, so I draw cars. Was terrible at things like landscapes, people.
So they ever have you write about your feelings or anything like that?
They would have me draw out my feelings. If I was feeling sad, draw something that expresses the emotion, and it would be like a cloud of tears, But no, it was nothing really memorable that I, would
Did you have girlfriends when you were younger? Prior to the marriage, or?
Nothing serious, just like, high school girlfriends. Stayed single up until I got married.
How old were you when you got married?
24, 25. We dated for a year and a half, something like that. Before her, dated another girl for about a year. I don't have a lot of relationships. Just and
keep to yourself, or?
Well, for the most part, I do have some social groups that I've been hanging out with, the last 6-7 years.
Well, right before, about the time you got out of Adobe, couldn't go stay with Mom. Do you remember writing anything like this?
Honestly, no. That does look like my handwriting.
Looks like your handwriting. Oh, it did surprise you if I told you that your mom brought this to the police department back about that time frame?
I wouldn't be surprised if it was something I did.
Well, why would you write something like that?
Honestly, I don't know.
Could be anger issues just about women in general because of what you went through with your mom, or?
This looks more like something from a movie.
From a movie? What kind of movie are you watching?
Well, my mom used to like horror movies.
So you wouldn't ever act out on something like that?
No.
That's written in there? As you were like in your early teens and even 19, 20 years old, what did you do for entertainment or hanging out, or?
When I wasn't working, it'd probably be movies.
Where would you go to the movies at?
See, at the time, it would have probably been Greenway Parkway and 7th Street. There used to be a movie theater where the Target is.
Okay. Kind of like the 3rd Street, 7th Street-ish area.
Yeah.
I think the Target's still over there, or it is now.
Trying to remember what's taking its spot right now. Yeah, because my after Smitty's, which was the one right next to where my house is, 7th Street in Hatcher.
Gotcha.
From there, I worked for James Miller from the church, and he did masonry. It's Jim Miller and Sons Masonry or something like that.
Construction or something.
And they're probably Third and Greenway Parkway. His father-in-law had a property that I would do work at. They do like wrought iron gates with the redwood, and I would treat the wood and cut it and fit it into the gates, and then help with installs. Worked with his sons, and when we had free time, we'd go movies.
So when you were in your bike phase, did you ever ride the bikes around Metro Center? Did you ever go to, where's the Burger King you worked at?
The Burger King I worked at was way out west.
How'd you get back and forth?
Well, that was when I was at the halfway house.
Oh, okay. Where was that at?
Like 51st and Thunderbird or Cactus. So
did you ever cruise around Metro at all? You know, golf and stuff, or castles and coasters?
My grandmother used to work at Sperry Federal Credit Union. I'd go over there every once in a while.
Where's that at?
Well, it used to be on the north side of Metro Center Parkway.
Okay. Like on the Peoria side, or just
Peoria
south
side,
of the
yeah.
Peoria, or like over by 31st or 28th, somewhere in that area?
Peoria, and it was part of the inner circle, but I'd take Peoria on over.
Where were you living then?
Sunny Slope.
So were you riding your bike or driving, or?
Bike or drive.
What kind of bike did you have then?
Might have been a Mongoose still.
How old were you then?
18, 19. Lived in my apartment maybe, well, I'd like to say a year. Oh yeah, about a year. Lived in an apartment with my current landlord. She has these like duplex apartments, and I lived there. And then behind me, we had like a couple guys that did missionary work. So they lived right behind me. Geez, that's a long time ago.
So to get to Metro Center, would you go Peoria, or sometimes use the bike trails that kind of go by the canal?
I didn't like taking the trails along the canal. I preferred Peoria.
You know all those little bike paths they have around, they go north of the canal, up like to, what is it, Peoria, Cactus, Thunderbird, up into the Sweetwater. You ever take you know those aqueducts they have that kind of run north to south?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Over by the canals there, over there.
Yeah, because it follows the Salt River Project.
Yeah, those aqueducts.
Yeah.
You know where the tunnel is that goes under the canal, or goes under the freeway, into, like right by Castles and Coasters, I think is what they call it now. You know which bike trails I'm talking about?
I know which ones you're talking about.
Did you frequent those at all for anything? Stay away from those. Did you ever go under the bridge?
Those always scared me. That's why I didn't take them.
Had you taken them?
I may have taken them once and then didn't like it.
You know which ones I'm talking about, right there by the canal, though, where the water is. Because you have the canal that runs like behind Metro Center over there, right by Castles and Coasters, like north of Dunlap.
Oh.
Right before Castles and Coasters. So if you're driving up I-17, you know the canal that you pass, like right after Dunlap. If you're going northland or south.
Yeah.
And then there's that little tunnel that goes under the freeway there, so people can get obviously from one side to the other. A lot of kids, going back and forth to go to Metro Center. You didn't hang out around that area at all?
No. My hangouts were in the Sunny Slope area.
Ever had any confrontations with anybody in those areas?
I avoid confrontation.
Now, back to with your girlfriends before you got married. Were you sexually active with them?
Was not sexually active until I got married. Well, we were sexually active before marriage, but yeah.
Now, did you ever have sex with anybody else before her then, or?
prostitute when I was 18. Mexican girl.
Did you ever have any, what I'll call a weenie wagger episodes where you maybe masturbated out in public?
No.
So if you masturbated, I mean, your DNA wouldn't be anywhere out in the public just floating around.
Not likely. Probably masturbated outside a couple times, but it's not like a regular.
Where would that happen at? Never around those bike paths, so.
No.
Or the canal.
Not that I.
Well, I think you would remember something like that, but.
Well, you would think. There's some things that I've done with friends, and you remember that? And no. And
you ever have any sex with any women out on the bike trails or anything?
No.
Never met any girls out there?
I wish I could have met someone riding, you know?
So there's no reason that your DNA should be anywhere around out there? Never had sex with any women, anything like that? So, you ever been accused of any sexual assaults?
No.
Have you ever done any sexual assaults? Other than the time that you stabbed that person that you don't really want to talk about?
Yeah.
You ever stab anybody else?
No.
Never had sex with anybody? Never stabbed anybody after that time when you were, what? How old were you when that first one happened?
About 15.
About 15 when that lady got hurt?
Yes.
And you had no idea who this lady was?
I had no clue. Never met her before.
So other than the prostitute and what's your ex-wife's name?
Amy.
Amy?
Yes.
She's the only person you've had sex with?
Up until then, yeah.
And you were 24, 25 then?
Yeah.
So in, say around 91, 92, what part of Phoenix were you living in?
Bethany Home, probably.
Bethany Home and
like 815 East Bethany Home.
Is that a house, apartment?
Apartment. That's my old roommate still lives there.
Randy McGlade?
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
RANDYMCGLADE.
How old's Randy?
Mid to late 50s.
And you were friends with him back then?
I've known him since I was 19. Maybe even 18. We worked together at St. Paul.
Which one?
420 West Watkins.
And how long ago was that? Did you work there and then stop and then come back? Or?
I worked there for 7 years. Got married, left, worked for them again in Washington State, and then worked for them again about 3 years ago. Did security.
What kind of security work?
The main dining room down the street.
Okay, so you're living at 815 East Bethany back in that time frame.
Yeah.
How long did you live there?
Till we got married.
What year did you get married, though? I know you can figure it out. It's probably not a happy time now, but... So roughly 92, you would have been 20.
97, 98.
97, 98, you got married?
I'm sorry, my brain is just trying to absorb all this and figure things
fine.
out.
You live with Randy, and I know earlier you were talking about you usually rode your bike. So how old were you when you got your own car? Was that with Randy helping you?
I was I was living. No, I wasn't living with him yet. It was right before I moved in with him. I had the car and maybe had it for a couple months before somebody I knew stole it. And
that was before you lived with. Do you remember when about 91 you moved in with him? Like, think of a holiday: Christmas, Thanksgiving, spring break.
it was. See, I moved in with him before my lease was up. My old apartment.
Where was the old apartment at?
Sunny Slope. On Townley.
Townley. How long did you live there?
Well, I had the lease for 1 year, and probably moved in there, moved out of there unofficially after 6 months. And rather than pay, the penalty for leaving the lease early, I just kept paying a monthly payment, and until my lease was up, and then started helping out with my rent where I was at, with Randy.
How long did you stay with him? You said till you were married?
Yeah.
So you think that was 91 and...
Late 90, early 91, mid 91.
So 72 to 92 is 20, plus 4 is 96. You would have been 24, so you think you got married 24, 25, so 96 to 97.
Mm-hmm.
So you were with Randy from 91 roughly until 96 or 97.
Yeah.
And when you first moved in with him, you still had a bike?
Yeah, I've had various bikes. Mongoose.
Would that have been your kind of major mode of transportation?
Yeah.
Did Randy let you use his car once in a while, or did you guys carpool to and from work? Or?
We carpooled to and from work once in a while. He usually started later than me. So sometimes I would take his car to work, and he would ride his bike down, and then we'd carpool back.
What kind of bikes did he have?
Huffy, Mango,
Do you think Randy disliked women at all, or he just was never into them?
I think he was afraid of them. He's, like me, he was a little different. Really shy. He really keeps to himself. The only people he hangs out with are a couple people he works with. Usually when he hangs out with them, I'm invited along as well. Still, even to this day.
Now, you guys still friends now? Do you guys hang out together still?
Yeah.
Now, during your times of turmoil in your younger years, did you ever dress in women's clothing or anything like that?
No.
Did you ever wear women's bodysuits or bathing suits or
No.
Nothing like that?
No.
So you didn't have any of those types of feelings or cross-dressing feelings? So would you say with your wife at the time, your sexual relation was normal?
Yeah. Normal. First time we had sex was in my room. Apartment was Randy. I don't even know if he knew it was happening, but
And you guys dated for about a year and a half before you got married?
Yeah.
So probably like in 94-ish maybe.
Yeah,
94, 95.
It was, we started dating before Thanksgiving 1 year. You'd think you'd remember something like your anniversaries, but no.
Depends on who they're with.
Yeah. and then we started dating in August, and then it was probably a few months after that we had sex for the first time, and it was kind of awkward. What does sex with her have to do with any of this?
Well, you've lived here off and on since you were 10 years old, roughly. And that would have been in 77.
Well,
or no, I'm sorry,
82.
82. So from 82 until 90 something, you were married to Amy, correct? Is that her name?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was married to her in mid 90s.
And then you guys lived in Phoenix?
We lived in Phoenix, in a little apartment just north of where I was already living.
And where was that?
Just north of Bethany Home. North of Bethany Home, there's a Jack in the Box on 7th. If you go, it's the road that Dad's on. We live just north of that road, maybe about 10th Street.
So 91-ish you move in with Randy till about 96, 97 when you get married. Then you live with Amy for a little bit.
Yeah.
Then you said she's from Washington. What year did you go to Washington?
No, she wasn't from Washington.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mistook that. But you guys moved to Washington.
Yeah, we moved to Washington. It was probably almost exactly 1 year after we got married.
So from 91 till 98, you were in Phoenix.
Yeah. Well, about 98.
But 91, 92, 93,
Yeah,
94, you're in Phoenix.
Yeah.
You're living around the area of, 8th Street and Bethany Home. You worked at St. Vincent de Paul then?
Yes.
And then when did you go to Smitty's, or was Smitty's before?
Smitty's was right before St. Vincent de Paul.
So roughly, when you're living with Randy when you're at St. Vincent de Paul.
Yeah.
And then 91. Were you there though, St. Vincent's the whole time you lived with Randy?
Yes.
Yeah. And what kind of car did Randy have?
He had a Hyundai and an Escort.
So in that early 90s area, you were in the Phoenix area.
Mm-hmm.
You lived in there. And do you remember hearing any news articles about any ladies being killed?
Probably saw a few.
Do you remember any specific ones? And you told me that around the Metro Center area on the bike paths, on the canals, you weren't ever around there. Maybe once in a while.
Yeah, once in a while, not like a regular thing.
You remember the name Angela Brosso at all?
No.
Well, she was killed around the bike paths in 1992. And then in 1993, there's a girl by the name of Melanie Bernas who was also killed around the bike, the canals and the bike paths over there. And there's some DNA evidence that kind of links you to those girls. Is there any way you can explain that to me?
No, because I don't know those names.
Well, any girl in particular, whether you remember their name or not, how would your DNA evidence be linked to them?
I have no clue.
You have no clue about
No.
two girls that were killed and your DNA being linked to their bodies. And those letters that you wrote when you were younger that your mom gave us, you kind of recognize those as being your handwriting. Very similar characteristics in those letters to what happened to these young ladies. And now years later, we have DNA that links you to those two ladies.
See how that's possible.
Well, how else would you know what DNA is?
Yeah,
right?
I know what DNA is.
Okay, what is DNA to you? Where does it come from?
DNA could be in semen, blood, saliva. That makes up our, it's our ID. It's our, tells our body, what hair color we have, what eye color we have.
And do you know the numbers on DNA, like what your specific DNA is to how many gazillions of people, and it can only be you?
I don't know.
It's in the trillions. So what I'm telling you is your DNA is linked to both these women who were killed. So I'm just curious, if you only had sex with the prostitute and only had sex with your wife, were never around the area around Metro Center where these ladies were found. One was up by her apartments on Cactus, and one was by the canal. How can you explain to me that your DNA is there?
I can't remember everything I did back then, but I know I didn't kill anyone.
Well, I would think that you would remember if you did something like that.
Yeah, I would.
So you sure you don't want to, now's your chance to kind of come and tell me, is there a reason something like that happened? I mean, it would help you get it off your chest if you did something like that.
I didn't kill anyone.
You didn't kill anybody?
No.
But yet you can't explain to me how your DNA is there.
It was embarrassing mentioning the prostitute because, I valued, at the time, I valued sex. Sex was, you don't have it until you're married. But, I did, for about a year, frequent Van Buren and Camelback Road.
How did you get there?
Car.
You sure you didn't have sex with these women and maybe something went awry after that happened?
No.
Well, I'm telling you, there's only one way your DNA could have got there, and that's by you ejaculating on them. So, you're a grown man, I'm a grown man. Explain to me, I've been doing this for a long time.
Unless there's someone I had sex with, it's impossible.
But you already told me you never had sex with those people, or anybody on the bike pass.
I've never had sex. Well, the only time I've had sex on a bike path was with my wife in Washington. But on bike path here in Phoenix, no. It's always been in the car or in the bedroom.
Okay, so say that you had sex with one of these women somewhere else and then brought them back to the bike path. That didn't happen either. So how are you going to explain to anybody, me included, that your DNA is on both these women?
I have
And
nothing for that.
they both are deceased.
everyone, as far as I know, everyone that I've ever had sex with is still alive.
So you've never killed anybody?
Nobody.
But your DNA is on these dead girls. How did it get there?
I don't know.
Well, I think you do know. I think you just have to be honest with yourself and come forward with what happened back then. I know you had a lot of anger issues with your mom and your grandma and stuff growing up.
Me and my mom dealt with that.
Yeah, but that was later.
No, we had started before I got married.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you sit here and think about it for a few minutes.
Well,
Do you need to use the restroom at all?
I do need to use the restroom.
Okay, give me just a minute, all right? I got to get a key to undo your little bracelets there.
And I need someone to call Randy so he can notify my daughter.
Okay, we'll take care of that a little bit.
I did not fucking kill anyone. Nobody.
You go to the bathroom, man?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's do that real quick. We're gonna leave these off, so you gotta be nice, okay?
I'll be nice.
Alright. Hold this, officer. We'll go right to the bathroom. We'll be back right in here, okay? It's kind of a surprise to us. Probably 2 years ago. Talked to somebody. Is that good?
Yeah.
You want to change some other way?
No, that's good.
Okay. Let me lock it so it doesn't tighten up on you, okay?
Yeah, that's all.
I don't want it cutting off circulation or anything like that, okay? Just hold tight.
Alright, I'm back with you.
How old are you now? 42. So, obviously, that's some curiosity factors going on. You told me earlier that, you are not the one you've ever killed anybody. Have you ever been with anyone when someone was killed?
No.
Has Randy ever killed anybody?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Do you know if Randy rode around the bike trails on his bike at all over there?
The only time I ever saw him ride was when he would ride with me.
So you were never with Randy when he attacked women and killed them or did anything like that?
No, and I couldn't see him doing that.
Doesn't seem like that type of guy.
No.
And earlier when I talked to you initially about when you were young, you were 15 years old, and you had that assault and you really didn't want to talk about it. You kind of mentioned that you blacked out. What did you mean by that?
The moment I struck her, I was blacked out. I was like kind of just, they explained it to me as it was like separating myself from something that goes against
your core beliefs.
Yeah.
Now, just be devil's advocate here. Later on in, this time frame where these women, they were attacked. Is it possible that you could have blacked out and done something like that to somebody and not recalled?
No, because I knew I had done something when that happened. I used to remember her name, but I've
taken it out of your memory
yeah.
bank. So you don't think there's any way that you're on the canal banks and these women come by and you black out and attack them and then have your way with them?
No.
What do you think should be done to somebody that does kill somebody?
Depends on their reasonings for doing it.
So you think there's a reason to kill somebody?
In rare occasions.
Explain that to me. Self-defense. Okay, that would work.
Self-defense in war. Otherwise, there's.
So if you have a young lady riding around on her bicycle, trying to get her nice exercise in, enjoying herself a little bit, it's maybe her escape from work, school, whatever it may be. They're riding around on the canal banks and or those bike trails, and somebody attacks them and ends up killing them. What do you think should happen to that person?
Well, that's not self-defense.
No. Do you usually carry knives with you anywhere?
No, I don't carry any weapons.
What did you assault that first lady with?
It was a kitchen knife.
So that's technically a weapon.
Well, back then I did. I went to a school, a state school, down on Central. I don't think it's there anymore. It's right behind where the news channel is, right at the park.
Central, and how far down, though?
Well, you know where the deck park is?
Okay, yeah.
There used to be a school just east of Central.
Central over there.
Yeah. And, after juvie, in juvie, you get the gang types that threaten you and stuff like that. While I was going to school.
Right. And at what age was that?
I was 15.
15. Just out of curiosity, we do a little bit of research on people when we try to talk to them, and you got a YouTube thing about you're in a church and it's Saint Maria Goretti. Do you know what she's the patron saint of or anything like that, or why would you be in a church for her?
I wasn't in a church for her.
Maybe we got the wrong Bryan Miller.
The only church I go to is,
You don't ever remember going in a church in St. Maria Goretti Church and filming anything?
No. Oh, St. Maria Goretti.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Am I saying it too weird for you?
Yeah, St. Maria Goretti.
You say tomato, I say tomato, right?
That's out in Scottsdale.
Well, what was that? What's that about?
Randy used to play the organ there, and he was practicing out there, and it was there's stained glass windows, and stained glass windows. There's pipe organ in there, and the videos of him at the organ practicing. Well, not really practicing, just playing around, because at the time he wasn't the organist there, but he still has keys to get in, and he had permission by the organist to go in. So, and that was the church that his parents went to.
Do you know what St. Maria is the patron saint of?
No.
Rape victims. So it's just kind of, could it be coincidence? Who knows? I think that's, we're cops. We look at things. That's what we do. So you blacked out that one time, but you still were aware of what you were doing. So as far as you know, you never blacked out and knocked any women off their bikes and took advantage of them and ended up killing them.
I've never taken advantage of
them. And you kind of talked about you were scared of, going through the tunnels and being on the bike trails over there. Why would you be scared of that?
Dark, vulnerable. I have fear of people. That's why, if there's conflict, I leave the conflict. I don't get into fights. Even if someone hits me, I don't hit back.
And Randy, you said right before I walked out that, you wanted me to call him to go get your daughter, or?
Oh, my daughter's home alone.
Okay.
She doesn't know where I'm at. I get home between 6:45 and 7 every day.
Okay. Do you have any knives at home?
There's kitchen knives. There might be like a fishing knife somewhere.
Do you carry weapons other than knives at all, or?
I don't carry any weapons.
Okay, no guns or anything like that?
The only gun in the house is that's a replica of an 1800s gunpowder, black powder gun. And I had 2 pistols that were my mom's, a shotgun, and a rifle. But I sold those a few months back.
And then your nickname's the Duck. What's that come from?
Nickname that I got in grade school. I used to make duck sounds,
So you like Duck Dynasty then?
No.
No. What language is that? Parenthesis means the duck. What is that? How do you say that?
The Hodden Lucas.
Hodden Lucas?
Hodden Lucas is Welsh.
Is Welsh.
For lucky duck.
For lucky duck, okay. So I would have been able to pronounce that unless you told me how.
Yeah.
And then your car, what's that all about?
The car started a year ago. I had bought, so when I came back to Phoenix, I had a Ford Mustang 4-cylinder. Needed a new car, so I had bought his wagon and
his wagon.
Randy's car, and it wasn't a wagon. It was the 4-door sedan that I have in my backyard right now. It needs some axles, so it doesn't drive. But I had bought another car of his after that one broke down, Ford Focus. Drove that for a while and didn't like it. And so in the search for another car, I just happened to pass that one while waiting for phone calls on another one. I was actually wanting a Ford Taurus SHO, but I passed that and I was like, yeah, well, I'll check them out. They had a couple of them there, 2 black and whites, and some really beat up crappy ones on 32nd and Greenway area and 32nd Street. Like GNS Auto, and it's like, oh, all right, don't mind the price. They look really good, and I've always wanted a Crown Vic because when I was security, we drove a Crown Vic, and I liked it. So bought it and really liked it, and joined local car club, Crown Vics of Arizona, basically Panther enthusiasts, Panther chassis, and fixing it up and stuff, and it's like, oh, I want to put the push bar back on it. So found the guy on Craigslist that I've got a push bumper, and all this other stuff. It's like, all right, come for the push bumper, and he's like, well, why don't you do this to it? And it's like, well, I don't want to do that to it. And it's like, why not? Because he's talking about the lights and everything, and it's like, I had issues with the legality of it, and after months of going over it, I finally bought the lights from them. They're all green and amber, and started with the interior lights, and started it up as like a zombie car, because I have friends that do the Arizona Corpse Crew, special events and stuff like that, Comic-Con, and for the zombie walk, not 2014, but 2013, we put Zombie Hunter on the back of the car and drove to the zombie walk. My daughter was all makeup and everything done. a zombie, and I wore a gas mask and I had a Nerf gun, and I think I wore a trench coat. And then, if you've been cyber stalking me, you've seen the costume. Plus,
I'm just giving you some back.
Giving me shit. Okay. And so, I dress up as this character, the zombie hunter. What started out as, a couple friends of mine wanted to do a diesel punk airship. I don't know if you know what diesel punk or steampunk is. Well, so it's steampunk. Steampunk, think Wild Wild West.
Okay.
Especially the movie that they had out. And so that's steampunk, and diesel punk would be Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. One is steam, gears, copper brass, Victorian and Edwardian period of dress and whatnot. And diesel punk is more diesel power, things look a little sleeker, a little more military-like. And so it's like, all right, so I made this costume, and that kind of also tied in with the car. So we decided to just make a theme out of it. We could use it for Comic-Con, so I rushed last year to put it all together. Did motor work on the car, took the motor down to the block, built it back up, camshaft, heads, you name it. And then we made up the logos, put on the side, and entered it in for their car show. And it's my daily driver, so other than a scooter that I have, which hasn't worked in a couple months, that's how that came to be. I had the partition in the back for a while, but it's like, it just weighs the car down, and, when I'm at work, I arrive to work early just to relax, unwind from the drive, and I couldn't recline the seats, so I took it out. My friends that do the zombie thing, they want to take rides in the back, so we did that for a little while, going to events, but we don't do that anymore.
What engine you have in there?
It's the stock 4.6. It's just like any P-71 cruiser that you may or may not have driven around in your career. So all the internals are stock, with the 112 service miles plus, the idle hours on it. So it's maybe got 200,000 miles worth of use on it. And then the heads, cams, those were replaced.
Now, did you learn mechanics on your own, or did somebody teach you that?
I've had to learn it all on my own.
Thank God for the internet, right?
Internet, and my uncle was a race car driver in his younger years. The Gordon Hamill.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to watch him build cars, and I kind of have the car gene in my blood. My grandmother worked for Ford. My uncle had raced in Trans Am Series, did drag racing, and my aunt had worked for Toyota. And so I've always had an interest in cars. My idol growing up was Richard Petty, and Big Daddy Ross, AJ Foyt.
Right. The Indianapolis guy.
Yeah. Since then, there hasn't been anyone.
And you said you don't like sports.
Well, auto sports. If it has wheels, I like it. So, motorcycles, bicycles, cars, airplanes once in a while, mostly older airplanes. But the car's my passion. And, you know, with steampunk, I'm a member of the Arizona Steampunk Society. We get together for group dinners and, you know, little naked events, you know, leatherworking, Nerf guns, you know, modifying the Nerf guns to look steampunk, you know, just painting, you know, plastic. So those are the weapons I have. They're plastic and cardboard.
Okay, so you're not really a weapons man per se?
No.
And you said other than like a fishing knife, did you fish, or is that?
I fished when I used to be in the youth group church. You know, we'd go to a canyon, hike down, fish. That was our meal.
Is Richard a religious guy? Other to say he played the organ at St. Maria?
Randy,
I'm sorry.
I would say he's religious, but he works at the church. He doesn't really go to church. You know. When he went to church, you know, it would have been St. Maria Goretti. That was, he used to play the organ there when he was a lot younger. He's been where he's at now, at St. Maria Goretti. I'm trying to, yeah, St. Maria Goretti is one in Scottsdale, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Because he works at a Lutheran church in Paris Valley right now.
And he hang out with your daughter quite a bit?
Yeah.
And you said earlier that he's not the type of guy that you think would do anything like that. When you were living with him back in that time frame?
He's odd and creepy, but I would never take him.
What makes him odd and creepy?
Just his mannerisms, his personality. But I've known him for so long that, you know, I trust him. And
so, when these young ladies were killed, you don't think he was around for any of that?
I wouldn't think so.
When we talk to him, is he going to have any inclination about what happened?
Feel free to talk to him.
Yeah. I'm still trying to ponder in my mind how your semen is with these women.
I'm at a loss on that.
And they end up dead. So back in 92, 93, when this happened, you're saying you had nothing to do with that. It's kind of hard for me to understand that and hard for me to believe.
It's hard for me to understand this too.
How could your semen get with these women and then end up dead?
I don't know.
Did somebody else
I don't
kill
know.
them?
I don't know what happened. I can't even speculate what happened.
I can't get it through my head how your semen is there. Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't. That doesn't make any sense to me. None of this does.
You wouldn't have blacked out.
No.
You're saying that you didn't kill them, but yet less than a year apart, these two ladies end up dead, and your semen is there. Explain that to me.
I have nothing on that.
And to your knowledge, knowing Richard I keep calling him Richard for some reason, Randy, as you do, tell me.
Richard was the guy I hung out with when I worked for Miller and Sons. That was James's son's name, Richard, his younger son.
So nobody you've ever been with has attacked these women and killed them in front of you or with you or told you about it? You don't ever recall reading in the paper about it?
No.
I mean, these are very vicious killings. Well, I still need you to think about it to try to explain this to me.
I need someone to contact Randy.
For?
My daughter.
Well, your daughter's been thinking.
All right.
Okay. Sorry about that. Let me go with a little thing that we talked to your ex-wife.
She knows about my juvenile history.
Okay, what does that have to do with wanting the state of Washington?
Well, the state of Washington, I had a self-defense case.
Tell me about that.
Person came into where I worked, asked to use the phone, and he came at me with a knife. And we had a struggle. She got cut, and I got arrested. I was found not guilty and released.
Okay, another little tidbit that she talked about, and I'm going to ask for your explanation on this, is that you said you just had normal sex with her. She's saying there's a little bit of bondage issues.
We used to use rope.
How would you use the rope?
Tie her up on the bed. It was all consensual though.
Right, and then what made her get tired? She mentioned that you started using a knife. What were you doing with the knife?
I don't even know how that started.
Is bondage what you consider normal sex, or?
Bondage can be normal. It's nothing unusual.
Well, it's been going on for centuries.
It's been going on for centuries, and...
But how did the knife play come into it?
Honestly, I don't know. It was terrifying. But I think the reason why we did it is because she really got off on it.
Why'd you guys split up?
She had an affair. She was manager at McDonald's, and I was working at another McDonald's, and we had opposing schedules. And one of the guys she worked with, who she's now married to, they were hanging out together a lot, and I didn't even think twice about it because I trusted her. And I came home early one day, and she said that she wasn't feeling well, and so she wasn't going to go to church. She was going to Nazarene church at the time. And so I left work early, came home, and she wasn't home. It's like, well, she said she wasn't going to go to church, and by now she would have been home unless they went out to lunch. But that wasn't the case, and so I thought about it for a while and thought about it, and I had his number, so I called it, and she answered. And she said, I'll be home in a little bit. And hours later, she showed up. And so we sat down on the bed. And I said, just tell me what's going on. So she did. She went out on a date with him. And she said, should I stay? Should I go? And I said, you need to go. Well, I excused myself for a moment, went outside, and, vented. Took a stick, beat it on the ground, came back in. And she asked me, what about Sarah? And I said, well, she stays here. And so she left. Evidently, he was outside waiting for her. And we got together a couple times after that. We went on a date after that even. And when my daughter got scared of her mom, that's when I filed the papers.
Well, her story is more along the lines is that you got a little out of hand with the bondage and the knife thing. What were you doing with the knife to her?
I would hold the blunt end of the blade up against her throat, and I would cut her clothes off for her. Whenever we did it, make sure you wear something that's you don't care about.
Don't want to ruin your good suit.
Yeah. And, I'd always ask her, you okay with this? You want this? She'd say yes.
But I still don't get why she would say it got out of hand if she wanted it. Did you ever carve anything on her?
Not carve. We did bloodletting a couple times. And
what's your definition of bloodletting?
Like a little poke with I think it was an X-Acto knife. And we did it a few times. And
did you ever do any religious symbols, like little crosses or anything?
No.
Any letters?
No.
Nothing like that?
No.
Yeah. Another thing I asked you about a little bit earlier, too, was wearing, like, bathing suits or something like that. Any reason why Randy would say that you had, like, a bodysuit hanging around when you were at his apartment? Did you have a girlfriend that you had a bodysuit for?
No. The only bodysuits I've had are, like, costume stuff.
Do they look like women's bathing suits, or?
No, they're all, like, solid color.
Any turquoise ones?
No.
Green?
I had a turquoise bike.
Turquoise bike?
Yeah.
Do you ever have a Diamondback bike?
No.
What kind of, you said you have a collection of bikes. What kind of bikes do you have at the house?
Mongoose, an old, it's a replica of the Schwinn Stingrays. That's a little kid's bike. And I've got Randy's bike there, which he hasn't used in a couple of years now.
Well, I'm a little perplexed, Bryan. Your wife's telling us that you murdered people in Washington, that you murdered people here. These two ladies are murdered, and your semen is with them. Does that seem like I'm kind of linking A to B or not?
It seems like something's wrong.
So what is it that's wrong? Did somebody else kill these women and then you came along and got sexually excited by it?
No.
So how did your semen get there?
I don't know.
Well, you would have to know. It can only come from you. You've already explained the whole DNA thing.
I've never killed anyone. When I was a teenager, I stabbed that woman.
Right.
That haunted me for years. It's still in a lot of ways haunts me.
Would it be coincidental that these women were stabbed? I personally don't like coincidence.
I don't either.
Well, is it odd that you stabbed a girl when you were 15 and then these ladies were stabbed?
I think the hard part for me to believe is that my semen is with someone, well, two people that are dead.
That's pretty strong evidence. That places you with these women. And you can't explain that.
And I don't even recall them. I don't know their names.
You didn't have to know their names if you killed them. Pardon?
Which I did not do.
It's your time to tell me what happened.
I don't know what happened because I was.
You have to know what happened.
No.
Your semen is there. That's the only person that does know is you. Because that's the only way your semen could have been with these women. Your ex-wife saying that you get bondage problems that get a little bit out of hand, saying that you murdered people in Washington and here. 2 women end up murdered here, or stabbed. You stabbed the lady when you were 15. You have a sexual diary that you wrote when you were sometime in Adobe or in the care home or halfway house, with a lot of similar things going on that happened in these crimes. It makes it very hard for me to believe that you're not involved. So if something happened and something got out of hand, then, what's your side of the story? How could that have happened? It's been a long time. I mean, I think it's time. You'll feel much better if you get something like that off your chest.
There's something.
Saint Maria even says she's the patron saint. And what about your fascination with Lenore?
That's my daughter's fascination.
That's your daughter's?
Yes.
That's not yours.
She loves Lenore.
Okay.
She's got a black dress that she's worn since the time I was married. She wanted to dress up as Wednesday Addams, and she was, oh, it's a Lenore dress too. But I had seen this video on YouTube, and it's like, Sarah, this girl's a lot like you. And she saw the videos and just fell in love with it, so.
Well, don't you think it's fair to the families of these ladies that they know what happened? I think you do. You have a conscience.
Yeah, I do have a conscience. That's why.
And I think deep down, you need to talk to yourself, explain to me what happened back then. I am going to charge you with 2 murders, and you are going to go to jail later tonight after I finish the paperwork, and it's up to the court system. Okay, you need another water, need to go to the restroom, you need a candy bar or anything. These are your choices, dude. I figured
I'll do the baked.
Yep.
Bullshit. Even if this freaking gets cleared up soon, I'm gonna lose my freaking job. This has to be a misunderstanding. I can't even stand the sight of blood. That's the problem. I should have spoken out. Please don't believe them. Whatever they've told you, don't believe them. You've known me all your life. Please tell me this is just a nightmare. Please tell me I fell asleep at working in my head. Not kill anyone. One stupid thing everyone holds against me and uses against me and thinks maybe things I didn't even do. At least I can trust Randy. Randy will only tell the truth. Or he sees the truth. Amy, I don't trust her for anything. She's up to something. A good, honest life. That is the world always has to screw with me. I go to work. Do my job. I come home. I take care of Sarah. This is just like when we I was a teenager and they thought it was like an old lady. This is all bullshit. I asked you why you wanted me to do it. You said you felt you needed to be punished. You can say everything. I don't even remember why I wrote this when I was a kid. Kill anyone. There's no way